Not what we were used. It was really the hat that was throwing me off. I was like, oh my goodness, that's Elder Bednar. I just have never seen him that way. I really was shocked because I thought that they were required to wear their suits to everything.
Mornings are better with a warm beverage, even for Latter-day Saints. Meet Postum, the ideal coffee alternative and proud sponsor of This Week in Mormons podcast. Spot it on the coffee aisle at Smith's Grocery or at your local nearby store. Can't locate it? No worries. Order it at postum.com. Explore delicious recipes to tailor your Postum experience. Start your day off right with Postum.
Hello, welcome to This Week in Mormons, the Twin Sisters edition with your sisters, real life sisters, and sisters of the gospel.
Yes.
Ariane Hales Smith.
And Timothy Hales. You were Ariane Hales at one point in your life.
I am Ariane Hales Smith, technically.
Yes.
It is my middle name.
It is your middle name. Yes.
Sometimes I slip.
Because your mother never gave you a middle name.
Yeah.
She was like, Ariane, that's good enough. You don't need anything else.
Anyway, we're back for July.
Yes.
We have lived a life in July.
I know.
We've both been to girls' camp and back.
And we are a little late recording this week. So I apologize to our listeners who are used to getting a new recording released on Saturday, that this is probably not going to be released until Monday because we're recording it on Sunday. We were supposed to record it on Friday night like we usually do, but I ended up with an emergency trip to Utah on Friday because I had my 17-year-old daughter down there who was doing some college tours and she got rear-ended.
As you do in Utah.
As you do in Utah, because if you've driven in Utah, the drivers down there are
spicy,
especially for us from Idaho. We don't drive like that. But anyway, having lived down there, you do adopt that similar driving standard, because when I lived down there, I drove like Utah drivers.
Yes.
Anyway, all is well. I got her home, so we're the episode's going to be a couple days late being released.
Better late than never.
But yes, we have both had a very full July. We both went to girls' camp. You went to girls' camp. I went to girls' camp first. You went to girls' camp second.
Yeah, I just got back a few days ago. I feel like I'm still recovering.
You need to share your stories because you got back. I left for Utah. We haven't even digested your girls' camp.
Okay. First of all, it was so fun. I love girls' camp. I loved it growing up. I love it as a leader. This is my first time going here in Idaho.
Okay.
I got called to be assistant camp director, which was so fun.
Okay.
Just got to plan it with the YCLs and one of my really good friends who was the camp leader. So it was really fun. It was very short camp this year, 2 nights.
Which is just like, wow.
2 nights, 3 days. The reason it was short is because we wanted a very particular camp, a church camp that is right on the lake, up in Cascade. And we were not first in line to get that camp in the pecking order.
The new reservation system these days, it's wild. It's
very convoluted and complex. And there's different dates for different people.
There's tiers.
We were very low on the tier to have access to this camp. So by the time we reserved, we had to take what we could get, which was a Monday night and a Tuesday night.
Okay.
So we did it, but it was great. We thought, better go to a great camp where we can do water sports.
Exactly.
And leave them wanting more.
Exactly.
Than to go to a dry camp in the desert.
That is very true.
With not a tree to be found.
Especially considering right now it's been 100 degrees in Idaho.
Yeah. But it was great. Our YCLs did such a great job helping us plan it. But I have to tell you about the funniest part.
Okay.
The snafus. Every camp has mishaps.
You told me you had some good girls' camp stories and you were refusing to share because you were like, I'm going to divulge on the podcast.
We had a few mishaps.
Every camp does.
But the most comical of our mishaps was during the testimony meeting. Okay, so girls' camp these days, we didn't do this in my day. Okay. But they do this in my daughter's generation. Okay. They do a faith walk.
Yes.
Which is basically a walk through the woods, quiet, reverent, reflective. There's some signs, you put up some signs with some scriptures and such. So our YCLs were like, we have to do a faith walk. We're like, great, you guys are in charge. They planned it out. Okay. We helped them make the posters. This walk goes through the woods of camp and ends at the lake.
Okay.
This campsite has a private dock. Yes. Right on the lake. And so we thought, okay, if we end at the lake, let's do our testimony meeting at the lake.
Because that would be really cool.
It would be so pretty. Yes. It's so beautiful. So we did. And then the YCLs, when they were planning camp, our theme this year was Let Your Light Shine.
Okay.
And the YCL's top of their list of things they wanted was floating lanterns on the lake.
Okay.
And so we're like, okay. We'll make it happen. So the plan was the girls do their faith walk. They come out by the lake. They are given a floating lantern to write on with a marker. To write like how they're going to let their light shine. And it has a battery operated candle in here because we're not going to start a forest fire.
Yeah, we got enough of those going on right now.
And we're going to put them in the lake. So Amy, my co-planner, and I came up with, we thought, well, how are we going to not send these out into the, how are we going to get these?
Okay.
So we came up with what we thought was a really great system.
Okay.
We created a rope with pool noodles to create a barrier for our lanterns.
So the lanterns would stay in a location.
We're tied the rope to the dock. We tied the other end to some trees. There is a boundary for the lanterns.
Okay.
And then Amy and I wore our swimsuits under our clothes. Because we thought, at the end, we'll just get in the water and we'll get them. Because this is not very deep water where we're roped off. We can just walk right in.
Okay.
So the problem was, when we were back home buying the pool noodles to make the rope contraption, we grossly underestimated the depth perception of how many pool noodles will it take to go from the dock to the trees?
Oh dear.
So we're a few pool noodles short. So we cut the pool noodles and spaced them out. So there were small gaps between each little section of pool noodles. But we thought, it'll work. It'll keep them in. No.
Oh dear.
So
Did you have a few escapees?
We had an escapee. This one,
just one?
Well, started with one.
Oh dear.
So this is what happened. We have beautiful music playing. We have our giant picture of Jesus, which we painted, which I think we talked about.
We talked about that in a previous podcast.
Paint by number. Yes. We revealed it there. The girls were so excited to see.
I have not seen it, but one of my friends saw it when she came over to get a spray tan from your daughter, and she said it's gorgeous.
I'll show you a picture. Okay. So picture the setting. It's dusk. Okay. The sun is setting. It's gorgeous. It's quiet. It's reverent. The girls are one at a time coming out of the woods, riding on their lanterns, letting it loose in the water. Okay. So they're all sitting there, and one lantern, probably only half the girls are back from the walk. Okay. One lantern jumps the rope and starts floating.
Okay. So into Cascade Lake.
Into Cascade Lake. So I am texting, there's a couple of people back. I was like, bring some life jackets back at camp. Cause I'm like, our little wading is now going to be a swim. So I'm like, bring some life jackets, please. So we get some life jackets. So we're ready. Okay. We're like, we're going to go for a little swim when this is over, a little more than we thought. But then more girls are putting their lanterns in. They're fine. But this one lantern, it's really traveling. And we're like, it's getting really far. I'm like, dang it. We should have left a kayak down here because we had put away all the water equipment because we thought we won't need it. We really could use that kayak now. Anyways, testimony meeting hasn't started. Girls are still putting their floating lanterns in. Then we see a boat out yonder, and our little lantern is far enough now that this boat is like, what is this? So the boat comes to inspect, and when the boat comes to inspect, it makes a bunch of waves.
Oh dear.
And the waves,
all the other lanterns.
All the lanterns start jumping the fence because of the waves. I'm like,
oh my gosh, this is hilarious.
So then the boat comes closer to us, pulls up to the beach right by our camp, which obviously that made most of the waves. And it's a ranger.
Oh, snap.
So all the girls are quietly whispering because the music is playing.
Oh, snap.
We're being reverent, but now we have a ranger. So this is exciting. So the bishop and our young women's president went and talked to him. Turns out he's a member of the church up there in the Cascade Ward.
Okay, so he at least wasn't.
And he said, "This looks like an object lesson gone awry." And they said, "Yeah." They said, I think the bishop said something to him like, "Yeah, we only had one that escaped till your waves hit. And now they're all out."
So kind of this is your fault, Mr. Ranger.
Yeah.
If you would have just stayed put and grabbed the lantern.
So the ranger was so nice. He was like, "Would you like help collecting them?" And we were like, "Yes, please."
Oh gosh.
So he gently takes his boat out and starts collecting the rogue lanterns, which at this point is maybe half.
Okay.
Half of our 20 lanterns. Okay. So in the meantime, our young women's president and Amy jump in the water, and they're shortening the rope system. We're retying, we're squeezing the pool noodles together. By this time we have a very, very tiny triangle of rope, like
where you
boundary.
Can put your lanterns.
So when we get them back, we put them in their tiny space and carry on with our testimony meeting.
Gosh.
But it was so funny because I'm like, wow, we didn't know we were going to get a testimony meeting and a show tonight. This is highly entertaining. But in the end, I was like, oh, I'm so glad that ranger came. Because Amy and I would have been swimming halfway across the lake.
Yeah, you would have in the dark in the kayak trying to get the lanterns.
So, that was really good.
Oh gosh, that's hilarious.
But it was lovely. It was just hilarious.
Okay, well, I cannot. I'm afraid I cannot top your girls' camp story. I will tell you, our girls' camp went really well. I was not the camp director. I was the camp cook along with my husband. But we agreed to go on a bunch of their activities. My camp was significantly longer than yours. Mine started on Tuesday and ended Saturday. So it was a long camp.
A long camp.
I will just tell you, in those 5 days, I logged over 20,000 steps every single day. One day I logged 27,000 steps.
Wow.
So it was a very active camp. The first day we went backpacking. I had never been backpacking before. I think I talked about this with David on the podcast, nor had I ever peed in the woods. Okay, I would do the backpacking thing again, but the peeing in the woods, no, I don't like peeing in the woods. But unfortunately, I don't think you can do the backpack thing without doing the peeing in the woods. I mean,
shoot, it's a package deal.
It's kind of a package deal. So I did tell and my husband, to his credit, because he understands the princess that I am, he made this a wonderful experience for me. So, and I was like 24 hours, I could do anything for 24 hours. And so anyway, it was fun. I'm glad I did it. I would probably go again with him. I don't know if I would go with anybody else because again, I don't mind making a fool of myself peeing in the woods in front of my husband, but I don't know if I'd want it.
It's a little awkward.
It's a little awkward.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we got to camp. We cooked good food. The biggest struggle that we had with our camp is because we had all of these activities. I mean, those girls were on the move all day long. It literally takes twice as long to get them packed up and going as you anticipate that it's going to be. And so I came away from camp with a new appreciation for how in the world Brigham Young moved the saints across America because...
Well, and so much stuff.
Yes.
Like the stuff that because you also did bike riding.
We did a bike ride.
And you did river rafting and brought your own rafts.
Yes.
I cannot comprehend how you hauled this amount of stuff up.
Oh, it was insane. So the rafts were all inflatable. And so my husband and I had our paddle boards, but our paddle boards were inflatable and we just threw them in the back of our pickup. We have this brother in our ward and his daughter was a YCL. And she kept saying, oh yeah, our trailer will fit everything. And Darren and I are both like, I don't know about that. Then we saw the trailer. Oh my gosh. He has...
What kind of trailer is
this?
It's
It's an enclosed trailer. He does a lot of motorbiking. And so he, I think, hauls his ATVs and motorbikes and whatnot in it.
So is that what they put all the bikes in?
So they put all of the bikes in there. And again, the rafts were deflated. So they were able to put those in there. And then all of the girls, camping stuff they put in there and there was still space in there. I was impressed. We didn't even attempt to throw our cooking stuff in there. We brought our own trailer up with our cooking stuff because we were at a camp where we didn't have access to a lodge. And so we had to basically create a whole outdoor kitchen. And so we've got all the cooking stuff to create an outdoor kitchen. So we brought our pickup with our own trailer that had all of our kitchen stuff in it.
Wow.
So
that's a lot of stuff. I can't imagine.
We
had a full trailer and several pickups.
The logistics of this were nothing short of amazing. I do have to say we do have our own cool beach story. So the last day, Friday, that they were there before we left Saturday morning, they had gone biking in the morning. They were late getting back from biking because they were late starting biking, and then they really wanted to go to Alturas Lake, which is about a 5-minute drive. So the camp director came to me and she said, they really want to go to the lake. I want to maximize their lake time. We still have our faith walk. We still have our testimony meeting. She said, would you guys be willing to bring dinner down to the lake? And I said, well, let's have Darren and I drive down to the lake and see what the logistics look like to bring dinner down to the lake. And so, we went down there and we probably spent an hour and a half there, with the girls hanging out before we headed back to camp to cook dinner. Mm-hmm. And the parking was adequate enough. And there was a table right there by where the girls were, like a built-in picnic table that were like, yeah, this is easy. We can bring dinner down to the lake. So we went back to camp. We were doing a baked ziti that night that we cooked in Dutch ovens. And so we just cooked it in the Dutch ovens and brought the Dutch ovens back with a Caesar salad and rolls. And the girls had no idea they were going to get to eat on the beach. Oh, and so they got their plates, and all on their own, they went and formed a circle on the beach, and they were just eating together. The leaders were off. Mm-hmm. This was just the girls, because again, this camp is just it's for these girls to bond.
Right.
And so just all on their own, they went and sat on the beach together in a big circle eating. And we were kind of standing back and just playing kind of, the silly games that teenage girls play. And the sun was setting, and it was just really, really, really cool. The girls loved it.
So. I love that. Our girls got along so great too.
Yeah.
There's just something
magical.
There was
no drama.
No, none at all at ours. I think there's just something magical about girls' camp.
But I don't think it's always that way, because when I first moved into this ward, I was the girls' camp director for 3 years. And oh my gosh, I think it's about personalities. I think the current girls have personalities that get along. We had like 35 girls. And let me tell you, that drama out the wazoo.
How many did you have this year?
14.
See, I also have a running theory, because our ward only has about 20.
Okay.
I have a running theory that the smaller you get, the less likely you're to have drama.
Oh, I think that's probably a good theory.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, we just have a really good group of girls right now. And it sounds like you do too. Like, we just have really good girls that are not about the drama.
Yeah.
But I also do think it helps that smaller numbers.
I think you're absolutely right about that, because you have, when I had between 30 and 35 girls, I had personalities from one spectrum to the other. Right. And I think when
they're more likely to break off into little groups when they get bigger like that.
Exactly.
When they're smaller, they can all hang together,
Exactly. So, all right. Well, we probably ought to do some news stories.
I know. We could talk about girls' camp all night.
I know. Before we get to the news stories, we do need to thank our sponsor, Postum.
Yes.
Now, usually I like to have a Postum beverage when we're recording.
I was supposed to bake a Postum goodie this month, but I failed.
I didn't. You know what? I thought there's no way, knowing your schedule, that you were going to get to the Postum goodie.
Maybe next month.
And just with our crazy schedule, we did not get our Postum beverages tonight, but we do want to thank Postum for being our sponsor. And definitely I will return, I think the next, in 2 weeks, we record again.
Oh, that's right.
Because we're early August. And so hopefully we'll either have a baked good or a Postum drink for that.
Yes.
And try something new with Postum. So thank you, Postum.
Thank you, Postum. Okay. First story we have this week is, we had the 24th of July this week, which I totally forgot about until I read this article.
Because we were at camp.
We were at camp. Also, we don't do much here to celebrate, but it's a big deal in Utah.
It is.
So there was an article released by the Church News about how they celebrated in Utah this year. They had a parade through Salt Lake, as they do, I guess. It's
called the Days of 47 parade.
Yeah, I've never lived in Utah really during the 24th. I was only there for college. Did you ever go to this parade when you lived there?
Went to the parade, but let me tell you what I did go to when I was there that I thought was so cool. So in order to have people not doing last minute parade floats, they make you finish your parade float about 3 or 4 days before the parade. And they haul your parade float to a convention center, and all of the parade floats are on display at the convention center.
We used to do that in Portland for the Rose Parade.
So you could go see the floats, because I'm not one to want to go stand in a line in a crowd for a parade. I will watch it on TV, love a parade on TV, but again, you can't really see them up close and personal. So it's so fun to go see the floats up close and personal. Okay. And so I have done that. But every year they have a grand marshal of the parade. And they also have, you have to be a member of Daughters of the Utah Pioneers. They have a like a beauty pageant contest. So I can't remember what the title is.
A Days of 47 Princess,
a Days of 47 Queen, or something like that. But you have to be part of the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers. So you have to have some link to pioneer ancestry that came into the Utah Valley.
So the Grand Marshal this year was Elder Bednar.
Yes.
And this article had pictures of him and his wife in the lead float car.
They were in a Jeep, an open top Jeep.
Yes, the lead car, waving to everybody. I did a double take. You said you did too.
I did too.
Because I did not recognize him. I was like, that face looks familiar. Because it was the first thing I saw when I opened the article before I had read who the Grand Marshal was. I was like, oh, that face looks really familiar. He is in a cowboy hat, jeans, and like a button-up
plaid button-down shirt.
Not what we were used. It was really the hat that was throwing me off. I was like, oh my goodness, that's Elder Bednar. I just have never seen him that way. I really was shocked because I thought that they were required to wear their suits to everything.
Well,
especially like a public event.
I thought so too. And Sister Bednar was sitting next to him, and she also had on jeans, and she had on a white button-down shirt,
like a bandana.
Yeah, and a little bandana around her neck. But it was just, I didn't even recognize him. No. I don't think I have ever seen Elder Bednar not in a white shirt, because sometimes they won't have their tie on if they're out visiting like in a really hot country and not maybe doing a touristy thing,
right?
And not on,
but still
not on a church assignment,
dress pants and a button-up shirt.
Exactly,
usually.
Yeah, exactly. Or occasionally, I've seen Elder Uchtdorf maybe in a polo shirt, but he still has dress pants on,
right?
Anyway, so if I had,
and it was the hat. The hat really threw me.
Well, it did, because you didn't see that coiffed of hair that he has.
He looked like a different person.
He looked like a different person. Like, seriously, if he'd been walking down the street, I'm not sure I would have recognized him.
I know.
It would have, it's freaky.
I kind of want to see all of them in their regular clothes. We've talked about this before.
And then it makes me wonder, did he own those jeans and a shirt? Was that in his closet?
Or did they have to give it to him so he looked like a normal person?
Because they were like, dude, a suit and tie for the parade.
You got to look like a normal.
It's really not going to work.
I don't know. It was fascinating, though.
It was.
So apparently there were 40 floats in the parade, and 20 of them were designed and built by Wards and Stakes. Yes. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure this is a tradition.
Exactly.
And they're used to it.
That because I had seen the floats on display.
Right. I'm sure they're used to it, and it's a tradition. Yeah. But really, if you were like, okay, your next assignment is to build a float, I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
So
exactly. And these are like, when I've seen the floats, they are legit, like, they know what they're doing, building sort of a thing.
I'm sure they are.
It's not just somebody grab a flatbed trailer and we'll throw some bales of hay and call it a float.
I'm sure they are. We're nothing if not overachievers out here in the Western United States.
Exactly.
Anyway, so that was a fun little article on how they celebrate in Utah.
Yes. And speaking of the 24th of July, I don't think it was lost on anybody that this was the day that they made the announcement that Salt Lake City has secured the bid for the 2034 Winter Olympics. Yay!
We are so excited about this. Okay, I lived there when they came in 2022. It was my last year of college, or 2002. It was my last year of college, and one of my major regrets of my life is that I did not volunteer, because they were on the hunt for volunteers.
They were.
BYU gave you 2 weeks off, and I would have done it. The only problem was I was working a full-time job and going to college part-time at night. So I was like, what? Yeah. I just had no way to get out of my full-time job.
Yeah.
I was devastated.
Oh.
If I could get a do-over, I would just
you would do that.
I would just quit the job.
Exactly. Well, it wasn't entirely a surprise that Utah received the bid. They were expected to receive the bid. So, of course, the church had prepared a statement, which upon Salt Lake City receiving the bid, the church promptly hit send and sent out this statement that says, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints extends its heartfelt congratulations to Salt Lake City on securing the bid to host the 2034 Winter Olympics. And they go on in this statement to talk about, the feelings of unity and peace that characterize the 2002 games, that they stand ready to support the 2034 games with volunteers and visitors from around the world. It's committed efforts to make Salt Lake City a host city that embodies the values of service, cooperation, and mutual respect. And then it finishes with, as the home of the international headquarters of the church, we will work with organizations, both local and international levels, to welcome the world as 2034 draws near. So that made me think back to 2022 or 20. I see now I'm doing it.
Now you're doing it too.
Made me think back to 2002. 2002 when Salt Lake City hosted the first time around, and what role did the church play? Well, the Deseret News was kind enough to issue an article the very next day after the bid announcement.
They reminded us.
To remind us, because it's probably going to be a roadmap for how the church approaches it this time around. One of the key things that was really big last time around is everybody kept saying, oh, these are going to be the Mormon Olympics. These are going to be the Mormon Olympics. And there was a lot of trepidation, especially from the media. Is these Olympics going to be all about the Mormon church? And so President Hinckley, because at that time we were still the Mormon church. We were the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we still called ourselves Mormons in 2002. President Hinckley and the church made a commitment that during the games, the church would not be proselytizing. So there was no missionaries going out talking to people or anything like that. I'm sure there were missionaries on Temple Square.
They doubled the Temple Square missionaries.
Exactly.
I remember that.
Exactly. But they weren't actively proselytizing.
They're not going to the sites.
Exactly. And so they kind of took a stepped back approach. And there are some interesting things that occurred from that step back approach. First of all, I did not realize this until I was reading the article. If you remember the 2002 games, they had the medal ceremonies at a location in downtown Salt Lake. Well, the backdrop of that location was the church office building, which had a huge banner, I think, of a speed skater, and the Salt Lake Temple.
And the temple, I remember.
Because when you think Salt Lake City, the iconic thing that comes to mind is the temple.
Well, and it's just like Paris, the Eiffel Towers in almost every media shot.
So the church donated the land that the church owned the land where they did the Metals Plaza. And the church said, hey, we've got this land that y'all can use from Metals Plaza. And you know what? We'll give you $5 million to build the Metals Plaza there. So guess where the Metals Plaza went?
Oh yeah. I'm sure there was a plan there.
You cannot buy that kind of publicity. And the other thing too is because, again, that they weren't actively out proselytizing, a lot of the media then made all sorts of inquiries and said, well, what is your church about? And it said that the church had literally a 24/7 operation filled with media people answering questions, or I should say public information people answering media questions, and the media on its own was doing stories about the church. So I thought that was great. They also talked about BYU being shut down for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I had former roommates that volunteered and had a great experience. So,
they talked about generally the volunteer dropout rate for the Olympics is somewhere between 15 and 20%. In Salt Lake City, it was less than 1%. And all of the languages that people spoke, the International Olympic Committee, the president at that time was Dutch. And he said, everywhere I went, there was somebody greeting me in Dutch. And so I suspect that probably the church took very careful notes about what worked and what didn't work from 2002. And I think in 2034, we will see probably a very similar approach.
Yeah.
I do not know if that lot in Salt Lake City is still available to have the temple as a backdrop for the metals ceremony.
I don't know. It'll be really fun to watch. And the temple will be done by then.
The temple will be done by then.
At least we hope.
Well, it's slated to be done in 2026. Yeah. So assuming that it's done in 2026, the church will have a couple of years to iron out kinks on Temple Square, because not only will they have the temple done, they'll have the new visitor center and all of that done. And hopefully they will be ironing out kinks.
I just think it's so smart for the Olympics to circle back to some of these cities. They built so much great infrastructure in Salt Lake. It would be a shame to not do it there again and they're using what they built. They're
using a lot of that infrastructure they have previously built, which is nice that it was such a quality build the first time around, and they've maintained it that they're able to use that again. Because if you've seen pictures of some cities that have formerly hosted Olympics and you look at their Olympic venues, it's like they got abandoned after the Olympics. So.
Well, and that's the bonus about coming back sooner rather than later.
Exactly.
If you wait 50 years.
Yeah.
So excited.
Well, speaking of Olympics, the Paris Olympics are on.
Now, we had discussed Oh, wait. Do you want to do the marathon story first?
Why don't you discuss the members, and then I'll talk about the 2 marathon runners.
So we have been waiting. We've been talking a lot about the track and field athletes.
Yes.
We have been waiting for a comprehensive list to come out. LDS Living usually supplies, and they finally did.
They did.
Just a couple days ago, they finally put out a comprehensive list of members of the church that are participating in the Olympics this year. So we won't hit on the track and field because we've talked about all of them. But we have a soccer player on USA soccer team named Taylor Booth. We have a rugby player on the men's team, Meke Unufi. I probably totally butchered that. And a women's rugby player, Stephanie Rovetti. A pistol shooter named Lexi Logan. We have a member of the church competing in swimming for Australia named Peter Bowl. So there's about, in total, if you count the track and field, which heavily, that's where most of the members of the church are competing. There's about a dozen athletes this year that are members of the church. So that's just kind of fun information, fun to watch. Yeah.
Okay, so I've talked a lot about the steeplechase guys, Kenneth Rooks and James Corrigan. Well, I want to circle back to the marathon guys because the marathon guys are getting a ton of press, including national press. And so I'm going to talk about this story that was in the Deseret News, and then I'm going to talk about what I heard nationally involving these marathon guys.
Okay.
There's 2 marathon guys, Connor Mance and Clayton Young, and they were teammates at BYU. And so they have known each other for a number of years. Not only that, they were both in the mechanical engineering program at BYU, and they both have mechanical engineering degrees.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So they have been teammates for years, and post BYU, they train together, and they share the same coach, which is a gentleman by the name of Ed Eyestone, and he also coaches the steeplechase. And so we've talked a lot about Ed Eyestone. So this article in the Deseret News talks about how do you prepare for a marathon in Paris? Because the marathon course in Paris is it's obviously 26 miles. It's going to wind its way through all sorts of historic sites in Paris. But it's not a flat course. There are areas of the course that are very up and down. In fact, there's one grade. So it's very hilly. There are hills at the 15K marker and the last 5K. Then there's a downhill at 28K, and there's a hill with a 13.5% grade. And so Connor Mance in this article is saying, this 13.5% grade scares me. He found a hill in Utah to train on that's close to a 10%, but it's going to be a super challenging course. And so the article talks about how they're training, that they do these short interval sprints and then they do these longer runs. And it's both Connor and Clayton doing these runs together. And they're hoping that training in the high altitude will help them as well.
Make up for some of that.
Make up for some of that because they will have better oxygen recovery once they get down near sea level. And so it's just super fascinating to learn about how you train for a marathon. Well, the other story that I heard that involved Connor and Clayton is, before I get there, I just want to hit a couple highlights from this story. Ed Eyestone is talking about Mance and just that he's an aggressive, intense runner. And he's really had to preach a lot of patience and restraint to Connor Mance because he wants to, when the bell goes off, he wants to get out there and get in front, which sometimes can or cannot be, depending on the race course, a good strategy. And so he's kind of working on teaching him some patience. And he says, Connor says, the best chance for success is knowing what you're capable of doing based on training. And so it's really interesting how they'll have like these really hard days of training and then these really light days of training. So that's about their training. Well, I was driving around last week and I was listening to NPR.
Okay.
And I kid you not, NPR had an interview that they did with Connor Mance and Clayton Young.
Fun.
And so I was like, okay, not only are they getting local press in the Deseret News, they're getting national press. And so I listened to the interview and it was a really well done interview. But here's the really cool thing. The very last question that the interview asked, and this is on NPR, people. I was telling my husband and he didn't believe me. The interviewer asked Connor and Clayton, what role does your faith play in your training and preparing for the Olympics? And both of them went on to express their testimony of the gospel, their belief in the atonement, and how they have this greater perspective that the world isn't just about running. Running is something they do, but it's not the be all to end all. They have, both of them are married. One of them has kids, that they have kind of this bigger perspective, and they have that as a result of their faith and the gospel. And every interview that I have read with either Connor or Clayton, they have brought in their faith, and they have just been such incredible ambassadors for the church in willingly and openly sharing how their faith impacts them as an Olympic athlete.
Wow.
And so,
well, and that's amazing that they asked that question. That is not a question they ask all athletes. Like, I mean, clearly they knew their background, the interviewer, but I want to listen to that. Which NPR was it?
It was national NPR.
Just on their podcast?
It was well, you know how they do news stories?
Right.
It was in the afternoon.
News Now or something.
News Now. Yeah, it was in the afternoon. In fact, you can Google NPR Clayton Young, Connor Mance interview, and it will pop up, and you can listen to it. It's real short. It's like, it's about 10 minutes, but it was I thought it was a really nice piece. I thought it was really well done. And I think it will be interesting. I am guessing that as it gets closer to the marathon, because they are the two athletes from America and they have trained together and given their background history, I'm guessing that NBC probably will have a profile on them as well.
Yeah.
So I believe the marathon is August 10th, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
It's one of the last events in the Olympics is the marathon. And so I'm going to be following that because I've really just enjoyed these stories on Connor Mance and Clayton Young.
Yeah, they're going to be fun to watch, especially because it's a package deal. It just makes it even more fun. So, okay, next story. This is a fun one. The missionaries of the Colorado Denver North Mission were invited to sing the national anthem at a Colorado Rockies baseball game.
180 of them.
180 of them on July 24th.
Again, we've had a lot going on this last week on July 24th.
We really partied this week. So the mission president, his name is Charles Clausen, was excited for the opportunity. All it says is a representative of the Rockies contacted him and asked them if they're interested. So I don't know how this happened. I'm guessing maybe there's some LDS ties somewhere there, and they knew that they could contact them. So of course he said yes, and they gave him some dates to pick from, and one of them was July 24th, and he said that's the winner.
He's like, yes, please.
So then it was kind of fun. He quickly realized, like, oh, I need someone to direct these missionaries. And they were at some stake meeting, and there was a musical number, and then they went out for ice cream afterwards, and the woman who was involved in the musical number, her name is Annie Piper, happened to be at the ice cream shop, and he all of a sudden had the thought, there she is. There's the person I need. So he asked her if she would conduct this choir of missionaries in singing the national anthem, which of course she said yes. Anyway, he said it was just a great experience for the missionaries and a great way to expose people to the missionaries. So they're like, oh, hey, we know them. We're familiar. Like, they're not scary, that kind of a thing.
Exactly.
But he said he was hoping the missionaries would also have just a meaningful, memorable experience out of this, which would help them, feel love for their country and for the freedom and for the gospel. And so kind of a cool experience.
I thought it was such a fun story, fun way to do something on your mission.
And then they all got to stay and watch the game.
Oh, okay.
They were playing the Red Sox. I saw some pictures in the article of the missionaries in the stands watching the game afterwards.
And that is so awesome. Again, you get to create this really good memory on your mission. And probably, again, the value of that in terms of proselytizing is there is no value on it. You know, people will remember that, and maybe they'll, maybe they will be kind to the missionaries. Maybe they will stop and listen and ponder and go, oh, I remember seeing you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, I think the value is, think of the exposure. You're exposed to thousands versus one at a time. You don't have to be proselytizing to, there's lots of creative ways.
Love it.
To share the gospel. So I think it's cool.
All right. YSA.
Oh, the YSA conference. Okay, Utah's gearing up for another big YSA conference. They did this last summer.
They did.
They're starting to do these across the country. We did one here in Boise. This year. This year at the YSA conference, they are hoping to break 2 Guinness World Records. You already read this. Otherwise, I would say, would you like to guess? 100% when I read the title of the article, which is they aim to break 2 records, right away I was like, speed dating. I didn't even read the article. Sure enough, one of the records one of them they are trying to break is the largest speed dating event. And then the second record they are trying to break is the most contributions to a greeting card. So for the greeting card,
and this is kind of fun. You don't have to be a YSA person to sign the greeting card.
They are collecting them from all over. I guess that still counts. I don't know. Guinness
says it still counts because you can submit it electronically between July 29th or 8 a.m. Mountain Time on July 29th to 8 p.m. Mountain Time on August 3rd. Yes. You can go online and submit your greeting.
A greeting. And the greeting is for President Nelson's 100th birthday. Yes. So they are hoping to collect over 100,000 birthday messages for President Nelson for his 100th birthday.
Which that is kind of a really cool. So I love that idea.
The contributions can be made in person at the conference or, like you said, virtually. So anyways.
So talk about the speed dating.
The speed dating will consist of 23-minute rounds with 30 seconds to rotate between each round.
Yes. So that when you do have to be in person.
Yes, you do have to be in person.
There's no virtual option for speed dating.
Yes, and that will happen on Saturday, August 3rd, and they're going to split them into age groups. 18 to 28 on one side, 25 to 35 on the other side, So
if you fall into that between 25 and 28, you can decide if you want to go in the younger section or the older section.
Do I want younger or older? So anyways, fun times. And then they're also doing a lot of the other events like they did last year. They're doing a 5K, temple trips, service project concerts, those types of things. So.
Okay. All right. Well, as was covered in the podcast last week, there was an age adjustment to YSA. It previously was 18 to 30. Mm-hmm. It has now been extended to 35. And so International Edition talked about that last week. And then this week, there was an article that came out about the reaction from young single adults.
Right. I'm curious, how do they feel about this?
They're actually quite pleased with it.
I bet they are. I bet because single adults they're getting older. Like people are getting married older. I'm sure as you approach that 30-year-old age,
exactly,
you probably start to panic. This is probably a bit of a relief.
And in some areas where there's a lot of professionals like Washington, D.C. and New York City, they've kind of been doing this on a test run for a while. And what they're finding is with some of these older single adults, they're now being able to put them in bishoprics, high council, stake relief society presidents, because they have a little bit more maturity and age to be able to handle that type of calling. And the article also talks about that many singles, when they were effectively, quote unquote, kicked out, kind of felt really lost. They didn't want to go to a family ward. They were kind of inactive. They also talked in this article that there were a lot of wards that just kind of turned a blind eye to when you turned 31 and let you stay under the guise of, we would much rather have them here than not.
Yeah.
So TWIM did receive an email from a listener on this subject. And I thought the email from the listener was so insightful that I want to read the email from the listener.
I haven't seen this yet. I want to.
So this is from Corey Ward, and he sent it in to, as we always tout, contact@thisweekinmormons.com. And he said, a year ago, the YS stake that covers the area around the University of Utah started a trial period of splitting up designating wards 18 to 25 and 26 to 35. They didn't make any boundary changes. Rather, they invited members to move their records into the ward most convenient for them to attend. A friend of mine informs me that he's had a positive experience in an upper YSA ward. Young adults attending university and young adults who are working professionals tend to have more in common and find it easier to make friends. The University of Utah Institute classes have already started splitting up into these age groups, and they seem to be well attended. From my observation from attending a YSA ward in the Salt Lake City, several of the components of this recent announcement have already been in effect de facto. A good portion of the active members in the ward have already passed the age of 31 and continue to attend the ward with the blessing of the bishopric. Several active members also live outside the ward boundaries, but also continue to be part of the ward with the blessing of the bishopric. They are simply grateful these members continue to come to church and don't see the need to push them to attend in the area or age group they are assigned to attend. The relaxed approach has tactily allowed many individuals to ward hop or have 2 or 3 wards that they regularly attend meetings and activities. This allows them to take part in activities that interest them, find more friends or dating partners, skirt past getting callings, which is very true. It is also a bit of a taboo to date someone within your own ward. If a relationship doesn't work out, it's easy to switch wards. Some of the wards in my stake are very well attended and have many visitors each week. Other wards have been struggling, and several of the active members have started to attend elsewhere, even though they maintain their membership records in their ward of residence. The recent announcement from the First Presidency signals that a large ward reorganization will be happening at a large scale in the Mormon corridor. It will likely involve changing boundaries for hundreds of congregations. The ward I attend should be affected. Attendance in this ward has dropped a lot over the past several months. Stake leaders likely try to balance out the active membership amongst the wards. In the long run, I don't think it will be successful, as individual young adults will choose where they want to attend based off their spiritual and social preferences.
Interesting.
He's probably right about that. So anyway, but Mr. Ward, Brother Ward, thank you for sending your comment in. I really liked it. It was well thought out.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear from someone who lives where there's so many.
Yes.
Because like here, there's not a lot of options.
No, there's only 2 or 3 options.
Yeah. So it's not like you can just ward hop easily like that. But I'm sure that's always an issue.
Exactly.
But I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, this is kind of how I feel about my teenager in Sunday school. She's always trying to hop into a different Sunday school class. And I don't really care anymore as long as she's present.
Exactly.
I know the Sunday school president probably feels differently and the teachers, but I'm like, hey, she is there. Let's count it a win.
Precisely.
So I get the conundrum. But again, if they're there, let's count it a win.
Exactly. So, I completely agree with you. Okay. So our next story. Here is the headline of the story. Which ward is the church's longest continually running ward? So I saw that headline this week. And of course, with it being the 24th of July, I was like, oh, it's got to be some downtown Salt Lake ward.
Me too.
You would be incorrect if you thought that.
Really?
Exactly. And
I didn't read this one. So where is it?
Okay. And if you thought, oh, maybe somewhere in New York or Nauvoo or Kirtland, where the church was originally, founded, you would be wrong about that too.
Okay.
So the longest continually running ward of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the Preston Ward in Preston, England.
Really?
It has been active since being organized as the Preston branch on August 6th, 1837.
Okay.
And
so this is probably because there's not as many members there, so they're not constantly splitting and breaking apart wards, right?
Well, yeah, but even if they were constantly splitting and breaking apart wards, you would, unless you dissolve the ward, you'd still always have the Preston ward.
Right.
So this ward got established when there were a bunch of LDS missionaries that went over there and started converting people. A number of those saints obviously immigrated over and crossed the plains, as we earlier talked about. But that ward has been active. And that ward it's interesting in reading the article, it has ebbed and flowed in terms of people in and out. It's also a very internationally diverse ward, which I thought was very fascinating. They have their bishop, let's see if I can find his name here. Anyway, but before I get to the bishop, the Preston Ward supersedes by 12 years any congregation in Utah or Salt Lake or any other place.
Interesting.
So it's not even a horse race.
Wow. Yeah, they got a big head start.
Exactly. So their bishop, his name is Bishop Rant Shaw. And where was he from? I'm trying to remember where he was from. I did not highlight this here. I hate it when I don't do that. Anyway.
He wasn't from England.
He was not from England. So he clicked off the nationalities of people in the ward. He's got people from Hungary, Romania, Chile, England, Denmark, Republic of Israel, Northern Ireland, Zimbabwe, Scotland, Nigeria, Angola, Brazil, Fiji, United States, Cuba, Sri Lanka, Botswana, Canary Islands, Italy, Chile, El Salvador, Honduras, Spain, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia.
Okay, that's really cool.
It is really cool.
This sounds like a really nice ward.
It is really, really cool.
A cool ward to be
in. Yes. Yes. So when he was asked how he would describe the ward, he said, the Preston ward is home to a faithful congregation who embrace each other's differences and come together in their shared faith of Jesus Christ. We are a diverse ward helping individuals and families feel a belonging through our various backgrounds, cultures, knowledge of the gospel. We are able to strengthen testimonies, grow in faith and gospel knowledge. And he talks about how the diversity strengthens testimony and strengthens unity in their ward. He also says it's also a super transient ward. He's only been in the ward 4.5 years. Let's see. Oh, that is the stake president had only been in the ward 4.5 years because the stake president is a member of this ward. And the Bishop Ranshaw, even less. But they say the ward is rich with history and super multicultural. So I thought that article was fascinating. I loved it.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. Okay, one of our last articles. This is a BYU story. The creamery on 9th is moving.
Yes.
If you know anything about BYU, you know it's famous for its creamery, delicious ice cream, and chocolate milk.
Well, and that creamery used to be the grocery store.
It did. It's talking about how it's a 75-year-old campus landmark, but it was a grocery store while I was there in the early 2000s. There was no creamery there. That creamery moved in shortly after I left.
Yeah, the creamery originally was over kind of behind,
and they still have
Deseret
that
Towers.
They still have that old creamery by Deseret Towers, I think, and then they also have the creamery on 9th. But the creamery on 9th has outgrown itself. It is a creamery, but they also still have a tiny grocery store inside. It says,
"Oh, I didn't realize they still had a little bit of groceries inside."
They do have a little bit of groceries inside. I remember when they bought that building because it used to be Kent's Groceries. The students were upset because that's where they got their groceries.
Exactly. So especially in Heritage.
I believe the compromise was we'll leave the groceries. We'll just make part of it into a creamery. Okay. So it is a tiny grocery store, but it has outgrown the demand. So they are going to build a new one. It says that every year they have 1.3 million customers that visit the creamery annually. I don't know if that's both locations or just that one, but that's a lot of people.
Well, the other thing too is the new location is going to be behind that location, between that location and where the common building is for Heritage Halls. And
there's not a lot of room
back there. And they're doubling their space. And so it leaves me scratching my head. Are they going to build up? Or is the creamery going to be multi-level?
I don't know. I'm not sure how they're going to do this, but they're not moving far. They're just moving a few feet over
in a larger space.
But it says it will have a 70% increase in retail space. So there you go.
Well, the other thing I liked about the article is you have to talk about the flavors.
I had not heard of this. Apparently
they
have
ice cream flavors.
A new presidential collection of flavors, as in BYU president, not USA president.
Yes.
So they have one called Whoosh Cecil, named for the current president, Cecil Samuelson. They have a Worthen's PB&C, which is like a peanut butter concoction named for Kevin Worthen. And they have a Shanley chocolate.
It's in Shanley.
In Shanley chocolate.
Like insanely, only it's in Shanley.
In Shanley chocolate, yes. Which debuted in 2023. Anyway.
It's Dutch chocolate ice cream with marshmallows
and brownie pieces. Apparently that's the favorite.
It was voted number 1.
But I thought that Whoosh Cecil looked good too. It's chocolate ice cream with salted caramel and cashews.
I know.
These all look good. I would like to try the presidential collection. I don't know when I will be in Utah again, but they look delicious.
The other one that they talked about that I really liked is they had one for Ernest Wilkinson.
Oh, they did?
And
I didn't see that one.
That one is called Earnestly Chocolate. And it's chocolate ice cream, caramel swirl, marshmallow swirl, and chocolate-covered caramel cups.
Oh, well, that sounds good, too.
And that was created in 1999 to celebrate the rededication of the Wilkinson Center.
Oh, man.
I know. I was reading this article, and I was craving every single ice cream.
I really do love BYU ice cream.
It's delicious.
And their chocolate milk.
It's the best. What can I say?
Why can't we get some of that here in Idaho?
I know. All right. Well, believe it or not, that wraps it up for us for news stories. Now, normally at this point in time, I would move on to Mormons behaving badly. I have a story, and maybe I'll just kind of hit the highlights of it because I didn't even throw a link into it because it was just
It was really bad.
It was just kind of, it was two friends that were both, they grew up together as members, and one ended up killing the other, and there were some mental health issues involved, and there was sentencing this last week, and it was a super, super sad story. So I didn't really want to dwell on that. But other than that, the Mormons seem to pretty much be behaving themselves.
Everyone's been good this week.
We
appreciate that.
We have not had a lot of Mormons behaving badly this summer.
I know.
Other than just like updates here and there.
Which is unusual because sometimes summer drives people.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes people do weird things.
So I guess that will move us on to our favorite things.
Okay.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I will go first. I'm very excited to share my favorite thing this month. I almost shared it last month, but I had not tested it yet.
Oh,
I thought I cannot share this until I test it.
That seems very fair.
So I saw this thing online. I ordered it on Amazon. It is about the size of my palm. Fits in my palm. It is a battery rechargeable operated pump to blow up your swim floaties and tubes.
Are you kidding?
It's amazing.
How does something that small blow them up?
It is that small. It has 2 different tips you can attach to it. You push a button and it blows up like your pool floats. Wow. So I've used it several times now, and it has not run out of battery yet. And I've blown up like 3 to 4 pretty big pool floats. So,
I'm impressed.
It's a good thing.
Okay.
We'll put it on the Instagram page.
Send me the link and I will get it on the Instagram page.
It's my favorite thing I've bought this summer because there's nothing worse than blowing up pool toys.
Oh, amen.
In like 90-degree weather
and the kids are
with
sitting
small
there,
children going, hurry mom, hurry mom. So
exactly.
It's amazing. Worth every penny. So I just keep it in my swim bag. And then when we get home, I charge it and I put it right back in the swim bag. So it's ready to go every time we go.
Perfect. All right. Well, my favorite thing, before I went backpacking, I hit the dollar store and I wanted to get just some snacks that I could keep in my backpack in case I needed energy or whatnot when I was backpacking. So, there wasn't, I mean, we were hardcore, like marching up the hill. We only stopped a few times. There was never really an opportunity to open the backpack and grab a snack. So when I got to the top of this hill that we marched up, or was probably more of a mountain, I was very hungry. And so I pulled out one of the things that I had purchased at the dollar store. And one of the things I had purchased at the dollar store were these things right here. They are Nerd gummy clusters. And I had never had these Nerd gummy clusters before.
I cannot believe we haven't talked about this.
I cannot believe we haven't
I love the Nerd gummy clusters. And I took some to camp too. I also did not eat them because I didn't have a chance. I was too busy chasing lanterns.
So I get to the top of the mountain and I open up the Nerd gummy clusters, never having had them before, put them in my mouth, and I'm like, holy crap, where have these been all my life? These are delicious.
They're fun.
So that is what I have tonight. I brought a bag. I will even share one with you if you want.
Yay.
I will describe them to our viewers if you haven't had them. So it is a gummy, and the gummy is surrounded by little nerds.
This is the only way to eat nerds. I love nerds, but they're too messy to eat.
Exactly. They end up everywhere. And just so you know, last night, Darren and I were at Winco grocery shopping, and he wanted to get some Jelly Bellies because it'd been years since he'd eaten Jelly Bellies. And he turned around right after camp and went on High Adventure. And one of the priests on High Adventure had Jelly Bellies and was like, when Darren needed an energy boost, was throwing him a Jelly Belly. In the bulk section now at Winco, they carry the gummy clusters.
Oh, you can buy them in bulk now.
You can buy them in bulk at
Very
Winco.
Nice.
If you happen to live in the Intermountain West and have a Winco near you. If you don't, petition Winco to build a grocery store in your area because you really want a Winco. They're like the best grocery store ever.
Winco's great.
Okay.
All
right. Well,
those are delicious.
They really are. So now that I have my mouth full and I'm going to try and wrap up the show, you can stick around for Patreon.
Yes, we are going to talk in Patreon. What are we? I can't even remember what we're talking about.
We are talking about.
Oh, that's right.
You tell me what we're talking about.
We're talking about a new documentary that is taking over the internet. Everybody I know has been watching this. It is the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders documentary. What's it called?
It is called America's Sweethearts.
America's Sweethearts.
America's Sweethearts Dallas Cowboys.
That's what it's called. We will discuss because there are connections to the church.
Yes. The gentleman who directed this documentary, Greg Whiteley, is a member of the church. So that is why he has made This Week in Mormons, because we have an LDS connection.
Yeah. So we'll discuss that.
We will discuss that. So the listeners, thank you very much for joining us tonight. If you have any comments, you could reach out at contact at thisweekinmormons.com. Those comments are, as you can tell from what we read tonight, every single person who reaches out, those comments are reviewed and sent to the hosts accordingly and appropriately. So please, any comments, feel free to reach out. You can also find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. And of course, we've got the Twin Sisters Instagram, which we will put up a picture of Ariane's little flotation filler and then my gummy cluster nerds. So thank you very much. We appreciate your support.
Thanks for listening.